for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stein, you were chairman of the DBB when the Department of Defense commissioned you guys to do the study. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And the goal was to look at how to make back office operations more efficient, save money. That was the objective of the study.
Yes, sir.
And as I understand, I just want to walk through the basics here. And as I understand it, we felt like you needed some help on a study this size, so you worked with McKinsey. They did a lot of the work to come up with the findings. Is that right?
No. The way it worked is I asked Kenny to lead this effort.
Okay. So the DBB led the effort.
The DBB led the effort.
McKinsey helped.
McKinsey helped. Yes.
Okay.
But
the conclusions were that you could save $125 billion in taxpayer dollars over 5 years at the Department of Defense. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
And that savings meant that you could save money in back office operations. That money could then go to upgraded weapon systems and to our troops in the field.
Yes.
Great objective. I mean, that's exactly what we want. I think we all want to have happen. Now, so you get this study. It says you can save $125 billion over 5 years and put the money in troops and better weapon systems. All sounds good. My guess is this wasn't the first study that the DBB had authorized and commissioned to do. You probably do studies all the time and have reports. Is that accurate? This wasn't your first study?
This was not our first study.
So you do this all the time?
Yes.
Right? So when all these other studies, you commission a study, you work with some outside group, maybe or maybe not, you get back the report. What typically happens with the report and all those other studies? What do you do with the report? They're put on the website and they're distributed, bounded. The DoD website, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And are they typically printed out, lots of copies, published, wide dissemination? Does that all happen?
Yes, sir.
Every other time you've done a study and got the conclusions, that's the normal course of business.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that sort of raises the obvious question. Did that happen with this report?
I think it was taken off the website.
So, all the other times you use taxpayer dollars, you do a study, find out something important for taxpayers and potentially savings, there's a normal way that information is presented to the public. DoD puts it on their website, they take that report, they print it, they make several copies, i.e. it's published, and it gets wide dissemination so we can learn the valuable information that we spend a lot of taxpayer dollars to get.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this case, was the report put on the website?
It was put on the website and taken down.
Oh, so it didn't stay on the website. Okay.
After I left the DBD.
And that's not the normal course of business, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Was it printed?
I think there are people told not to print the report.
Okay, so it wasn't printed. Now, Mr. Tillotson looks like he's disagreeing based on his hand motion over there.
Well, there's your printed report.
Okay, was it widely disseminated, Mr. Stein?
I mean, Kenny, you can talk to that.
Mr. Klepper?
Well, I don't know if it was widely disseminated. I know after I left the board, I called back in and asked if I could get a printed copy, and they told me that they were told not to print it.
Not to print.
That's the first printed copy I've ever seen.
Mr. Tillotson, is that the only printed copy, or were there lots of copies?
There are lots of copies.
Really?
Yes, and they were distributed at the time.
Well, why does the guy who chaired the DBB at the time the report was commissioned, and at the time that the report was actually completed, say that that wasn't widely disseminated, wasn't printed, and was taken off the website?
So I have no idea why he wasn't given a copy.
Why did the Washington Post report what Mr. Stein seems to be, and Mr. Klepper seemed to be saying here today, and not what you're saying?
Because they also believe, as Mr. Stein believes, that it was taken off the website. It was not. To be accurate, it was moved from one location to another location. It was never taken off the website.
Was it moved from a high-profile location to a somewhat less high-profile location?
It was moved to the meeting minutes location, which is publicly available. It's been downloaded 2,800 times since January of 2015.
Mr. Stein, is that consistent with how things are normally done with the other reports, the many other reports you've commissioned?
This is the best of my knowledge. I have not checked. Kenny, do you have any comment there?
Well, let's just assume you guys assume that what you're saying is exactly right. Give me, because I got just a few seconds here, tell me why. Why the difference? Why was this report treated different? Mr. Stein, why would it be treated different?
I don't understand it.
Maybe it was the magnitude of the findings? Could that be? Seems logical to me. Let me just, Mr. Chairman, if I could just read one. We have an email from Deputy Secretary of Defense, Mr. Work, that he sent to the Secretary of the Navy, Mr. Mabus, and he says this. He criticizes a speech that Mr. Mabus made where he referred to the very report we're talking about right here. And he said, there were problems with your speech. And let me just quote, Senator McCain believes we can take a 30% reduction in management headquarters. He says to Mr. Mabus, your comments could easily be used by him and his staff as justification for the size of the cuts referenced in the report. So maybe the reason it was treated different is because some folks at DoD didn't actually want this out there, this $8 million study that shows $125 billion in savings over 5 years. Could that be a logical explanation why it was treated different, Mr. Stein?
I have no idea. I really don't. I left the DBB, and after I left DBB, I had no responsibility on what happened to the report. All I know is if I was still chairman of the DBB, that report would have been...
Treated like it normally would, like all the reports are treated, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman